Welcome to the Utah Outdoor Recreation Budget webinar. Thank you so much for joining us. We believe this webinar should be less than an hour, so I am guessing it will be approximately a half hour with some time for questions at the end of that time, as well as during that time. So if you have questions as we're going along, please type them into the chat line down here, and we can answer those as we go along. We sure appreciate your joining us and hope that this makes the application process much easier for you when we open the grant period in January. We're excited to see a lot of your projects as they come in. Our mission as an office is to ensure that Utahns can live a healthy and active lifestyle through outdoor recreation. One of the ways that we do that is through this outdoor recreation grant. And we hope that this grant can create outdoor recreation amenities in and around you. Here's the agenda for today. We're going to first go over the matches and the things that are eligible as a cost for a match or for the grant to pay for. There's a couple small things that are new for 2019. One of those is probably especially exciting to those who have not yet who have previously been doing this grant. And then just a few common budget mistakes. We'll go through some of those and we'll take a look at the spreadsheet and some examples. We'll review the important dates and then we'll go into other questions. So on the match, well, for example, first off, the grant amounts will range from between $5,000 and $150,000. As a review, it's given as a 50-50 match. And of that match, half of the applicant and partner combination has to be cash. The applicant, must put in some cash, not just the partners. There's been not many, but there's been a few occasions where you'll see an applicant get a grant and they have a partner or two or three, and they're not actually putting in any cash themselves, or even in some extreme examples, not even some in-kind. So there's no requirement on an amount, but just some cash to show that there is some commitment on the behalf of the applicant. And then again, remember, it is a reimbursement grant. So after the applicant has spent the money, that is when they will send in their invoices in a reimbursement request and they will receive that funding. And this is a review for those of you who have attended one of our workshops or last year's webinar, or who have looked at our program grant. These allowable costs are used that can be part of the cost that the grant covers or as a match. And that is the rental of equipment, the purchase of supplies, and other relevant construction costs. The purchase of eligible non-fixed assets, such as trail building machinery, hand tools for the trail work, land clearing, etc., whatever is needed for your project. And again, this isn't just for trails. You can refer to the program guide to go over the types of projects that are eligible. We feel like it is a large amount, but it does not include many sports courts or fields or that kind of thing. Another allowable match or something to be for the grant cost to go for is the services provided for skilled labor, and unskilled labor is okay as an in-kind match. And then gifts and donations are acceptable if they are to be spent or used during the project construction period. And then on the ineligible costs or matches, you cannot use as a match the use of your own equipment, materials, or real estate property. And that doesn't mean that if you are a city and you're working with the county as a partner and the county says, we are going to charge you, city, X amount of dollars to use our equipment. If you're having to pay for it, then that is an eligible cost. If you are not having to pay for it, that is not eligible. However, in the case of something where somebody is donating that use of that equipment, that is eligible. I hope that's clear. Let me know if it's not. Other ineligible costs would include administrative costs, photocopies, the applicant's mileage. Now, if you have a contractor that is charging you mileage because you are located in a rural area, that is an okay and acceptable cost. Food, clothing, grand opening costs, applicant and partner staff time that would have already been paid, grant writing of any kind, future maintenance costs, and on that staff time, one of the things that we do allow is for an applicant to use their staff that are skilled and able to do the trail as a match. So that type of thing is eligible. Please, if you're going to do that and you haven't done it before, contact me and I can go through that with you. But that is one of the newer things that we've allowed in the last year or two. Future maintenance costs need to be something that you've worked into future budgets and work completed prior to the grant award, such as in a phase 1 or something, or the purchase of real estate for the project are not eligible for the costs or matches, but there is a way that we do have that noted. And we would add that the investments that you have made thus far in your project need to be reflected within the application and within the budget worksheet. We will show you in just a little bit where that might be shown on the budget sheet, but those real estate purchases and prior work expenses should be shown on the budget sheet in a designated section to demonstrate your commitment to this project. That will be in line 81 of the budget sheet. Costs associated with engineering plans may be used as a portion of the match, so up to a point, and that point is 15%, but it's not an allowable cost to be reimbursed by the Utah Outdoor Recreation Grant. So there are different columns on the spreadsheet, and we will point that out. And some things are eligible for the applicant to pay for that are not eligible to be paid for by the grant, and that is one of the few. As noted on the application, we have had the option of a secondary funding choice. Please don't have a huge gap between the first and second choice. We realize that sometimes in the past that people have mistakenly put a lot less of a choice for the secondary funding, and when awarded, they were told us that they could not afford to do the project as described. That's when you've completely got a different project. So If you're going to apply for a $100,000 project or $100,000 in grant funding, $90,000 might be a good secondary choice, but $50,000 or half of what you were previously asking might be a vastly different project. So please have a lesser amount and not a huge amount. And then please note that this is only for projects that are larger than $15,000. That is new for 2019. So if you are applying for a small project, don't put down a secondary funding option at all. So just wanted to reiterate that if you do receive that second choice funding, there's no budget changes that you can make. And you don't have to put a secondary funding option. That's, as I said, it's an option. Also new for 2019, we're allowing this increased value of volunteers. So according to a nationwide group which calculates the value of a volunteer every year and breaks that down by state, the volunteers are worth $24.39 an hour. So as you are working this out on your budget sheet, you may want to note that. So you have units, say 20 hours at $24.39 an hour, and that adds up to a nice match. So take advantage of that going forward. Just to go through some common budget mistakes. You want to give yourself enough time to do it right. So don't save this part to the last minute. I think there's been a lot more mistakes on those that are trying to get that budget done on the last day. Please read through the budget, check to make sure that the numbers are matching in the application. The application, you'll be entering in some of those monetary figures, and they need to match up what you're showing in the budget sheet. And then just to reiterate, the applicants need to show that they're putting some skin in the game as well. Funds and in-kind matches can't just come from other partners and a grant and also have nothing come from the actual applicant. So please make sure that if you are the applicant or you're helping the applicant, that the applicant is committed to the process enough that they're contributing. And then the other mistake that we've seen in the past is something where they've got in the budget sheet ineligible purchases. Things are not eligible to buy with that. It's a single purchase. It's in the case of somebody just buying a trail building piece of machinery and nothing else. So check on that to just reassure yourself that everything is an eligible purchase. And then the other part that also happens when it's being done at the last minute is there's too much guesswork in the budget because they really haven't gotten a bid, which is fine. But if you can get a bid that is just some initial work, it may give you a good idea of what things will cost. So prices that are too low are red flags to the committee. They'll either think that the project is going to be too low of a quality, or the actual bids will put the project over budget and the grant recipient won't be able to do it. That last thing has happened. So, and if it's too high, it looks like you've really padded the budget, it's too inflated, or it can look really foolishly expensive. We've had that also happen in the past where somebody did what the scoring committee jokingly referred to as a luxury trailhead bathroom. So don't be that one. And then We've also have had in the past where they've shown items in the budget that weren't mentioned in the application. One of the noticeable things might be something like a trail kiosk, and you show it in the budget, but it was never mentioned in the description in the application. Don't leave out things like that as you're describing it. I think you're just doing yourself a disservice by not really showing the full extent of here's what I'm doing for X amount of money. And then something small might be best explained either on the line in the budget or within the application. For example, seating. Let us know why you're needing money for seating. It might be because you're trying to get a bank stabilized, or it might be because you need to close an illegal trail. That's fine. Just explain. And that are there any questions at this point? Are the slides available after the presentation? Even better than that, this webinar is being recorded, so the whole thing will be available on the website. So this is what the budget sheet will look like. And this is, if you haven't filled it out before, it's being done in an Excel spreadsheet. Some of the columns have been locked. Please note that you'll put in here how much you're asking for as far as a grant, and then your own contribution here as far as cash, how much the partners might put in, and then the in-kind descriptions are listed here. If you haven't put enough, so it's not become a 50-50 match, there will be this automatic you are not currently qualified. Once that amount equals the grant request, then it will no longer be shown in red. So there is some automation that we've tried to put in here to help ensure that you don't make some of these mistakes, but it's not totally infallible. So note here the amounts here, and make sure that that the math is adding up to the same figures that you're putting down in the application. I just want to reiterate how important it is to check the math. In this particular example, as you recall on the previous page where we showed that it was 150, there's this breakdown that we have in the detailed description, and you're going to be putting in here where that money's going to go to. As noted previously, that amount was supposed to be 150, but it's not showing here. And the applicant funds haven't added up to the same amount here as well. So this is something that is not automatic. You're going to want to verify that this matches those amounts above. So if you're asking for 150,000, that amount should be matched here. And if you are matching that with 150,000 or some odd, and you're showing that here, the applicant funds, it needs to show up here, and then as well as the partner funds. So just verify that and make sure it adds up exactly. Now, we do allow for a contingency. It's not necessarily truly advised, but we understand that sometimes prices can go up quite a bit with contractors, but we don't allow more than 10%. So as you note here, the projected costs is $345,000. I would also say that it shouldn't be more than 10% of what you're matching, and the grant amount as well. But this is out of whack, and please don't do this either. This should have been no more than $34,500. So that's something that's not probably automatically going to catch it. But so please, that is one of the areas that can be screwed up if you're not careful. The other portion is you've got the partner funds should be shown in the partner funds column and not in, see it says community volunteers for building and cleaning trails. This wasn't the applicant. This should have been in the partner funds column. So just make sure you've got things in the right column. And then the other part that I would note is please try to show something specific. So community volunteers is something generic we're putting here. We hopefully don't see that from you, that you actually can list the name of the volunteer organization. Again, it shouldn't look too pie in the sky. Hopefully, that is somebody who is showing support by committing that, yes, we are going to actually do the work and help with that project to make sure it's getting done. This is an example of a good projected budget. This is an actual budget from a previous applicant in 2017 that has now finished their project. As you can see here, they did not know who they were going to have as their bidder. So we have got this on the example spreadsheet, and you can just put awarded bidder. And if you do know some specifics, such as they had Department of Natural Resources Trail Cat operator, then put that. As much detail as you can would be appreciated. Notice they didn't put just community volunteers, but they actually wrote Orem Youth Cycling Association community volunteers, and specifically what they were going to do, how many hours they anticipated that would take, the value per hour. And again, they were high school kids, but they did put down the minimum wage, which is what we asked in 2017. The extended cost, and then that being listed in the perfect column, the partners fund column, and then the totals over there. Now, what is also really nice is the fact that it was pretty similar to what the actual budget ended up being, and you can't see the whole thing, but it ended up that they didn't have, the awarded bidder ended up being Avid Trails to build this bike park, and they had a lot more specifics on what went into it. You don't have to turn this in as your final budget, but that's perfectly okay to do. It makes it nice to keep track of. So generally what we are expecting is that you have a projected budget, what you think it will cost. Now, in their case, they ended up, they got their grant of $30,000. They did end up spending just a little bit more than that. It wasn't perfect, but that's pretty darn good to just be a grand over or so. So, does anybody have any questions yet? As you recall, remember how I talked about if you've had work done previously or you've done some real estate purchases, things that aren't eligible, but definitely show that commitment to the project. These additional ineligible project costs can be added in here to show the true value of the project. Here's $1 million project. This particular applicant had asked for $150,000. We're matching it with another $150,000, but had this $700,000, and they explained all of that here, and it actually goes on. I would duplicate that by having some of this information also in the application, but there is this small little cell that they've obviously filled quite well to explain what this $700,000 previous investment was, and that did include the purchase of the land, I do believe. I just wanted to review these important dates. We do have the grant application opening on the 10th, and it will close on February 28th, 2019. That early deadline of February 14th is for those of you who would like to email us and say that your application is in the drafts form in Salesforce, which is our online application portal, and that you would like us to check it out and make sure that you're not missing anything that is major. We're not going to go into the content and grade that at this time, but we can look that over. But please give us plenty of time by doing this on or before February 24th, and then those applications are due February 28th by 5 p.m. The final decisions and grants approved will be by the end of April 2019, and we will let you know before that. The contracts will be sent out to be signed May, June of 2019. In between the time that you've been told that your grant's been approved and the contract's been signed, you actually could start your project. But I would plan on anything that you're applying for this year to perhaps start construction this May of 2019, so you can get at least 2 full years of good weather seasons to get it completed. So it will just need to be done by May, June of 2021. Does anybody have any questions? Because that is really it for the budget sheet. And I can go back or show you what it's like online. But here is my contact information. I've highlighted in red my cell phones because sometimes I'm not in my office at this number, but you can email me or Danielle. I will be out of the office next week, however, but we have not only this webinar recorded, but we have a step-by-step application webinar. If you weren't able to turn into that this morning, it was recorded and it will be posted on the website in a day or two. So, are there any questions? If not, you can get off now, but if you've got questions, go ahead and type them into the chat line. Yes, I mentioned that some of the engineering plans will be used as a portion of the applicant match. Can you say more about that? Yes, that can be up to 15% of your match. So if you're putting in $100,000 as your match, including in-kind, 15,000 of that can be used to go towards the engineering plans. And I will just say once again that the conceptual plans are what need to be turned in at the time of the application. If you've got your engineering plans, that's great, but if you're not going to get your engineering plans done until after you know you've got the grant, that's what this is for. Happy to help. Were there any other questions in this realm? Well, Thank you so much. I look forward to seeing all your grant projects come in. Have a great holiday season, everyone. Oh, feasibility studies, are they eligible? Debbie, could you explain a little bit more? Because I really don't think so. That's a little too initial into the, a lot of that kind of thing has to be done prior. If I were you and you're looking at getting feasibility studies done, you may want to check with the National Park Service's Rivers, Trails, and Conservation Assistance Program and see if they can't help link you up with an opportunity to work on a feasibility study and look into resources to get that paid for. And Rose is putting in the link for them. So you're welcome. Good. Thank you.